But you're not a man. You're not a person if you don't cry. It just makes it makes me feel good just talking about anything that's worthwhile.
5 championship rings, 2 Defensive Player of the Year awards, a Hall of Fame bust with his name on it. For a while, Dennis Rodman was the most talked about athlete on the planet, loved, feared, and impossible to ignore. But behind the tattoos, the dyed hair, and the wild headlines, there was a much sadder story quietly unfolding. One of addiction, broken family bonds, and children who grew up wishing their father would just pick up the phone. Dennis Keith Rodman is an American former professional basketball player who spent 14 seasons in the NBA, becoming known as one of the greatest rebounders and defenders the sport has ever seen. Rodman won 5 NBA championships too with the Detroit Pistons in 1989 and 1990, and 3 more with the Chicago Bulls alongside Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen in 1996, 1997, and 1998.
Hitting on all 3, 7 of 7 at the line. Final seconds of this first half. Jordan having trouble getting across. Good pressure. Finds Pippen. Gets it off. That's it by Rodman.
He led the league in rebounding for 7 consecutive seasons, an almost unheard of streak, and won back-to-back NBA Defensive Player of the Year awards in 1990 and 1991. Off the court, Rodman became just as famous for his personality as his play the ever-changing hair colors, the tattoos, the piercings, the wedding dress publicity stunt, and a run of headline-grabbing relationships that made him a tabloid fixture throughout the 1990s. In 2011, he was inducted into the Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame, cementing his place among the greatest to ever play the game. But despite the championships and the fame, Rodman has spent decades fighting a very public battle with alcoholism, financial instability, and a relationship with his own children that has been, by his own daughter's account, almost entirely broken. But before we get into all of that, make sure to subscribe. For more than 2 decades, Dennis Rodman has struggled openly with alcohol addiction, cycling through rehab stays, relapses, and painful public incidents that repeatedly made headlines. His first major stint in treatment came in 2008, after his own manager confirmed publicly that Rodman had been drinking excessively and that it was affecting his ability to find work.
He's just been going through a lot of emotional issues the past couple of months. He's battled his alcohol issues over the years.
He later appeared on the 3rd season of Celebrity Rehab with Dr. Drew, opening his struggles up to a national television audience. One of the most painful chapters came in 2013, following a controversial trip to North Korea, where Rodman had organized an exhibition basketball game and publicly sang happy birthday to North Korean leader Kim Jong-un.
Happy birthday to you.
In an interview with CNN shortly after returning home, an intoxicated and visibly unraveling Rodman gave a chaotic, incoherent answer that appeared to suggest an American who was being held captive in North Korea bore some responsibility for his own detention. The backlash was immediate and fierce. Rodman's agent later explained that the pressure of being treated like a superhuman political fixer on the world stage had simply become too much, and Rodman checked into rehab shortly afterward, saying he was embarrassed, saddened, and remorseful for the pain his words had caused. The cycle continued for years. In 2018, Rodman was arrested for driving under the influence with a blood alcohol level more than 2.5 times the legal limit. He entered treatment once again, and in later interviews, described being sober one day at a time as an ongoing struggle, admitting that alcohol had been a battle he'd fought on and off for well over a decade at that point. Rodman has since said he's made real progress, insisting in more recent interviews that he's no longer trying to self-destruct the way he did in years past, and that he finally feels like he has his life pointed in the right direction. But the damage caused during those years, both to his health and to his family, has proven far harder to repair than his sobriety streaks alone. Dennis Rodman was born on May 13, 1961, in Trenton, New Jersey, before his family moved to Dallas, Texas, where he grew up in one of the city's poorest neighborhoods. His father left the family when Rodman was still a young child, leaving his mother to raise Dennis and his 2 sisters largely on her own. Rodman has spoken about how that early abandonment shaped him, and how growing up without a present father figure of his own became something he would, in painful and complicated ways, repeat with his own children decades later. Unlike most future NBA superstars, Rodman wasn't a basketball prodigy as a teenager. He was cut from his high school basketball team and stood barely 5'9" by the time he graduated. After high school, he worked as a janitor at the Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport, sweeping floors with no clear path toward professional sports. Then, in his late teens, Rodman experienced a dramatic growth spurt, shooting up to nearly 6'8" almost overnight. That sudden change in his body opened a door nobody expected, and he eventually landed at Southeastern Oklahoma State University, a small NAIA school, where his rebounding and defensive instincts began turning heads for the first time. It's a background that makes his eventual rise to 5 championships and a Hall of Fame plaque almost impossible to believe the airport janitor, who was told he wasn't good enough for his own high school team, transformed into one of the most dominant defensive players professional basketball has ever seen. Drafted 27th overall by the Detroit Pistons in 1986, Rodman joined a physical, defense-first Pistons team that would become known as the Bad Boys, a group built around toughness, intimidation, and relentless effort. Rodman fit the identity perfectly, quickly establishing himself as one of the most disruptive defenders in the league. Alongside stars like Isaiah Thomas and Joe Dumars, Rodman helped the Pistons win back-to-back NBA championships in 1989 and 1990, developing a reputation as a player who would do absolutely anything to win diving for loose balls, outworking bigger opponents on the boards, and taking on the toughest defensive assignments night after night.
But All-America Dennis Rodman hit the hook shot for 2 of his 19 points. He also grabbed 19 rebounds. Rodman played with a great deal of enthusiasm.
After the Pistons dynasty faded, Rodman was traded to the San Antonio Spurs, where he continued his historic rebounding dominance, leading the league in rebounds per game in back-to-back seasons. But it was his move to the Chicago Bulls in 1995 that transformed him into a global icon. Paired with Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen, Rodman became the final piece of one of the greatest teams in basketball history. His rebounding and defense freed up Jordan and Pippen to dominate offensively. And together, the trio led the Bulls to 3 more championships in 1996, 1997, and 1998, including the legendary 72-win season in 1996, still regarded by many as the greatest single regular season in NBA history. Rodman led the NBA in total rebounding for 7 consecutive seasons from 1992 through 1998, a streak that remains one of the most remarkable and least likely to ever be repeated in modern basketball, given how the game's style of play has changed. He was named to 2 all-defensive first teams and finished his career with a reputation as arguably the greatest pure rebounder the sport has ever produced, pound for pound, relative to his height. But even at the height of his on-court dominance, Rodman's off-court behavior was already beginning to overshadow his basketball brilliance. His marriage to actress and model Carmen Electra in 1998 lasted only a matter of months before being annulled. His publicity stunts, including arriving at a book, signing in a wedding dress, generated headlines. But they were also early signs of a much deeper personal turbulence that fans wouldn't fully understand until years later. Of all the difficult chapters in Dennis Rodman's post-basketball life, none has been more painful or more public than his relationship with his own children. Rodman has 3 children, daughter Alexis, from his marriage to his first wife Annie Bakes, and son DJ and daughter Trinity, both born during his relationship with his third wife, Michelle Moyer. Rodman and Moyer's marriage ended in a drawn-out divorce that lasted from 2004 to 2012, and DJ and Trinity primarily grew up living with their mother. In interviews years later, Trinity, who went on to become an Olympic gold medalist and one of the highest-paid players in professional women's soccer, described a childhood defined by her father's near-total absence. She recalled seeing him only a handful of times a year, describing a home life where money was so tight at points that the family reportedly lived out of a car after Rodman stopped providing financial support. Court records later confirmed that Rodman was ordered to pay $500,000 in back child support to Moyer. Trinity has been unflinching in describing her father in recent years, telling one interviewer bluntly, "He's not a dad maybe by blood, but nothing else," and describing the pain of hearing his voice at all. She recounted a brief period as a child when she and her brother tried living with him, only to find a house filled with constant parties rather than any semblance of a stable home. Despite this, Trinity has acknowledged that her father carries his own unresolved trauma, saying she believes he's never fully understood that people in his life simply wanted to be around him and see him happy, not take anything from him. Rodman has responded to his daughter's comments publicly at times, posting emotional messages saying he wishes his children would call him, that he's always available, and that he watches Trinity's soccer matches from afar, even from a hotel balcony, on at least one occasion, he says, just to avoid causing conflict by showing up in person. Whether or not reconciliation ever fully happens, the rift between Rodman and 2 of his children remains one of the most visible casualties of the years he spent battling addiction and chasing a spotlight that ultimately pulled him away from the people who needed him most. Financially, Rodman's post-retirement years have also been rocky. Reports throughout the 2000s and 2010s repeatedly describe him as broke or close to it, struggling to generate the kind of steady income his fame once guaranteed. His alcoholism made him difficult to insure for appearances and endorsement deals, according to those close to him at the time, further compounding his financial instability. Legal disputes over unpaid spousal and child support followed him through multiple court cases, at times threatening him with jail time for failure to meet his obligations. Despite it all, Rodman has continued to show up in public life in the years since appearing at NBA alumni events, doing interviews, and occasionally reconnecting, however briefly, with the spotlight that once made him one of the most recognizable athletes on the planet. He's spoken candidly about his ongoing effort to stay sober, acknowledging that recovery isn't linear and that he still has good days and difficult ones. Unlike the swagger and bravado that defined his playing days, the Dennis Rodman of today speaks in far more measured, reflective tones about the mistakes he's made and the relationships he's still hoping, even now, to repay.